Hey everyone, you're watching CryptoVantage. I'm Jen Senesi, and today we're going to be talking about gaming as an on-ramp to crypto. I'm joined by Leah Callon-Butler, the producer behind Play to Earn, a documentary that unpacks how Axie Infinity is helping uplift communities in the Philippines, and Beryl Li, a co-founder at Yield Guild Games. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for having us, Jen.
Hey, great to be here, Jen. Thanks.
Awesome. So I want to just jump right into it. Beryl, I want to start with you. Yield Guild Games is doing so many things right now. I feel like I hear about you in the news every other day. But let's take it back to the beginning. Tell me about Yield Guild Games and how it started.
Of course. To define Yield Guild Games, we're a gaming guild that's actually structured as a decentralized autonomous organization. So what we do is we actually we invest in various non-fungible tokens that are in play-to-earn games. And we look into leasing them out to our community of players.
That's awesome. I want to talk about DAOs. I could go down a whole rabbit hole with decentralized autonomous organizations. But first, Leah, I want to intro you. You're the producer behind Play to Earn. Talk to me about living in the Philippines and learning about these communities that we see in the documentary.
Yeah, look, honestly, I think that was one of the best things for my company, Emphasis, and my business partner, Nathan Smale, who was actually the producer of the documentary. I was the mere writer and narrator. But for us, we've been in the Philippines since 2018, and we've never lived in Metro Manila. We've always been in really rural areas, and it's what made us fall in love with the place. Also, I guess working in a space like crypto and fintech, I guess you always hear the promise of these technologies, like what they can do for people, how they can improve their lives. But I had never really seen it actually be adopted and really take off until I came to the Philippines. And, I'd been writing for CoinDesk about various technologies like blockchain for remittances, for example. It's a great use case for reducing cost and making remittances faster. But it wasn't until I heard this crazy, totally insane story about a provincial community amid the pandemic that was playing an extremely complex blockchain game, earning an in-game reward token and cashing it out to earn, up to $400 a month. And while that might not sound like that much, say to someone in the US, in the Philippines, that's for many people a lot more than they were earning. Even before they went into lockdown, lost their jobs, didn't have any government assistance, or at least very little government assistance to help them along the way. So, I guess for me, it was really that opportunity to demonstrate how blockchain is changing lives in the most unlikely of places, and perhaps with the types of communities that you wouldn't expect to uptake these technologies. And yeah, making the documentary was, I guess, an opportunity for myself and my business partner to be able to share some of those stories that we'd seen firsthand with the rest of the world.
Leah, you talked about those complexities, and as I watched the documentary, I too thought, wow, this is very complex. It takes some time to actually figure out how to get the game, get through the game, play it, and then cash out. And we often hear about these barriers when we read news stories about blockchain and when we listen to the media. Talk to me about those barriers to entry and how these communities are getting past them.
Yeah, so I think Axie Infinity, the blockchain game, which has become enormously popular over the last few months, there's a few barriers. Firstly, the game itself is pretty difficult to play. It's very strategic. People describe it as chess-like. So you can get in there and, it's certainly not a mindless, time-wasting game. You really do need to know what you're doing and really quite think about it if you want to actually be a top player that can earn good money from this thing. And the second part is cashing out your earnings. And I guess for me, having studied blockchain adoption for a long time, that's always been the hurdle for most people. If someone could tell you that Bitcoin has this incredible power to liberate people economically, but you have to buy it first. And if you don't have money to buy these cryptos, then, well, how do you get into that space? And I guess what these games did was change that. They allowed people to earn it. And, if you've got a wallet on your phone that is full of some kind of token that could possibly be, holding some real world value, and you've got time on your hands and no other income, that's pretty good incentive to actually jump through all the hoops that are required to turn it from a token called Smooth Love Potion in a blockchain game to food on the table. So I guess just to walk you through it, like back in the day when this first started, we had people who were willing to earn the token, then transfer that, sync and swap it through the game, transfer it to a decentralized exchange such as Uniswap, into a more like digestible crypto such as ETH, then send it to a regulated exchange such as coins.ph, which is really popular in the Philippines, or maybe BloomX, that could help you transfer that into Philippine pesos. And from there, you've still got to cash out. So either you could send it to a bank account, or if you're unbanked, you could send it to, say, an account that you hold with a cash out center. Here in the Philippines, you could even cash out through, say, 7-Eleven. But there's a lot of steps, right? And I think that's what was quite extraordinary about this, that crypto was always there, but we hadn't really seen people at mass scale willing to go through all of those steps to do this. I think the only reason that we've seen this happen is because of the community response. And that's really where something like Yield Guild Games comes in, to be able to kind of formalize that and deliver it at scale to make sure that more people can be onboarded. So I guess I'd throw to Beryl for that, because they're really the champions of education and onboarding.
Yeah, Beryl, just before you touch on education and onboarding, as someone who's born and raised in the Philippines, I know you really understand the space and you've been in it for a while, but were you surprised to see communities adopt this game so quickly?
Well, yes and no. No, because it's an easy way for them. Like, so early in the day, I was actually part of the team at coins.ph, and one thing that we've kept in mind is we never tell people that it's actually Bitcoin. That's actually the infrastructure to move funds for remittances, but it's actually the blockchain that's actually just moving the funds from behind. So if we actually mention anything about blockchain, DeFi, staking, APRs, with the community, they would not understand how to do this, right? What more setting up a MetaMask account, putting in funds and then sending it into a farm, right? So with gaming, it's farming, but at the same time, instead of using resources such as, funds, cash, or Bitcoin or ETH, players are actually using their time, so they're farming with their time to actually earn yield in the form of in-game rewards. And that concept, right, is really simple for the community, rather than telling them about staking. So it really simplified DeFi in that sense. So it's a very good intersection of gaming and DeFi.
It's so funny you mentioned, not really getting into the technical weeds of the platform, because I don't think that's just a problem for people in the Philippines. I think that's a problem for anywhere, especially with mainstream adoption. Once we start explaining what's going on behind the curtain, I think it feels very overwhelming to people.
That's right. Yeah, people get turned off.
Yeah.
With all these steps, like Leah just mentioned, it's just really difficult to follow.
Yeah, and I guess if there's no incentive, why would people bother going through all those hoops? Like, I guess where I'm from in Australia, people have access to bank accounts and credit cards and loans and all sorts of financial instruments fairly easily. I mean, if anything, you have loan offers and credit cards sent to you on your mailbox like daily. In the Philippines, it's a very different situation. It's only about 22% of the adult population that actually has a bank account. And even then, if you have a bank account, it doesn't guarantee that you actually have access to financial products that could change your economic status. So I guess the difference here in the Philippines is that people are actually incentivized to go and explore and use and experiment with alternative products. And I guess that's why it's so exciting here that things are really starting to take off.
When I think about the future of crypto, I don't look at the traditional thought leaders, but I look at people who are doing the things that need to be done in the crypto space. And one of those people is Sam Bankman-Fried. And I know FTX has sponsored some players through Yield Guild Games. Beryl, tell me about that partnership and how it came to be.
Yes, of course. So with sponsoring scholars, Yield Guild Games actually end up like breeding these NFT assets that's actually used to play a game called Axie. So you need 3 of these Axies. So last year, an Axie team would cost you $150.
And Axies look like these little
cute
monsters. I don't know why I call them monsters, like cute monsters.
Digital pets, and they battle with those pets. And right now, you'll find them in market. The cost would be $1,500 for a team. So a lot of the community members who don't have jobs right now and don't have much savings would not be able to enter the game and earn in-game rewards, right? And so this is where Yield Guild Games come in, because we invest in a lot of these NFT assets. We also partner with the likes of FTX that would help us, acquire or breed more of these NFT assets, and we get to actually lease them out to our players. So our players get to play for free. It's the simplest, simplest way to look at it is it's a non-collateralized loan. So we give them the Axies, they get to play, and when they earn in-game rewards, Yield Guild Games gets 10%. 20% goes to the managers who helps onboard the player, and 70% actually is kept by the player themselves. So we're trying to expand this sponsor scholar program within YGG, so we could actually onboard more scholars that could actually play games.
And the scholars that are onboarded, are they only based in the Philippines?
No, so we're global right now. I'd say that majority of our players are in the Philippines, but we're also in Indonesia, Latin America, Brazil, Venezuela. We also have a team in India as well. So yes, it seems like there's a trend that a lot of our players are from emerging markets.
I just want to add to that too. I think one thing that's really interesting about the FTX sponsor a scholar engagement is that FTX has obviously been spending a lot on sponsorship deals, like quite recently, and there's a lot of money being poured into that space, and it really represents a great opportunity to be able to access a new market of users that might be brand new to crypto and encourage them to come and have their first time with this new technology. But with Sponsor a Scholar, these are people kind of at another end of the scale. They're not elite athletes. They're not top players. They're not even influencers. They're people who didn't have the funds to be able to get into play to earn in the first place. So it's kind of flipped the e-gaming sponsorship model on its head to actually sponsor people at the bottom of the funnel to get their big break to get in first, which I think is really cool and such a transformative opportunity for some people who never would have had the chance to get in otherwise.
It's so interesting you bring that up, Leah. I feel like the sponsorship and what Axie Infinity is able to do for these communities brings us back to the original crypto ethos. It wasn't for the rich and the famous, but it really was to be able to bring financial freedom to the people who need it most. And that just warms my heart. All right.
Yeah, I want to say an interesting note as well is we've noticed that our players who've not have savings in the past, their entire mindset have actually changed through playing these games. That's because with no savings at all, it's their first time to actually earn in-game rewards, and then they get to actually choose what to do with those in-game rewards. Do they cash out? Do they put food on the table, milk for their kids, or do they actually collect more of these rewards and buy their own Axie team? And then you'd actually see players setting up their own manager program where they can actually onboard other scholars as well, and they end up breeding. So they become entrepreneurs themselves and investors as well, because they end up buying more NFT assets on the blockchain. What's also interesting is, so in the Philippines, we have the cycle of a non-ending cycle of debt. So with Axie Infinity, the rewards are actually more than the minimum wage. So the minimum wage would be $200, but with playing Axie Infinity, they could earn up to 400 to. There is a time that rewards would go to $1,000. They get to cash out. So that's a lot that they use to pay back their loan and debt, and they could actually start setting up their own business.
That's incredible. I want to talk about decentralized autonomous organizations. It feels like this is the latest buzzword when we talk about decentralization. I think it's where the future is going. I'm all for more transparency when it comes to how businesses are operated, and Yield Guild Games has just become a DAO, and you had an amazing token sale. I think that it sold out in 30 seconds. So congratulations. Tell me about the decision to make it a DAO and how that's benefiting investors and players.
Yeah, so I think the mission of YGG is to really help a lot of the community members, right? And it just so happened that we ended up getting investment to really build it out. Yeah, so 45% of our token allocation is actually for the community. So we're looking into airdropping it. There's a level up system within YGG as well. So the more time that players end up playing the game, the more of YGG tokens they could actually end up earning. Yeah, so in the beginning of the DAO, it would actually be the founders that would make most of the decisions. But as we grow, we onboard investors, advisors, and then through the sale, we get our tokens to the hands of our community. And yeah, so anybody who has a token, a YGG token, would be eligible to pass proposals, and they get to vote on decisions of the DAO. And so hopefully in the future, the decision making would disperse to more members of the community.
Leah, I have to ask you, when it comes to the metaverse, is this the future? Do we all need to just get on board with the metaverse and make our own NFT characters and stop worrying about the physical world?
Look, I think the metaverse has become a bit of a buzzword now, and people are throwing it all around. And there's also a lot of centralized entities that are wanting to take a piece of this and own it now. Like we've heard from Facebook, for example, they're all piling in on this trend. For me, it's less about the buzzword and more about the opportunity that it represents if we're actually pushing for an open metaverse, and that is an interoperable one that is permissionless and I guess allowing anyone to participate. Like if we don't have that, if we have kind of these multiple metaverses across multiple centralized platforms, then that's not really what we're aiming for. I think the goal is to ensure that the users, participants, players actually have some rights in this space. They actually have digital property rights over the assets that they can own on the internet. And if they're going to participate in this new world, that they can actually go into it and have some kind of, coming back to the idea of rights, essentially. I think this is going to continue to evolve, but really we already live in virtual worlds. We spend so much of our life online. This is only going to become a larger space, and I think the lines between the metaverse and the physical world will begin to blur. So people need to start thinking about, if you're actually going to spend a lot of your time in virtual worlds, don't you care about actually deriving some value from the things that you generate and own and care about in virtual worlds in exactly the same way that you would in the real world? Like, you hear people all the time talk about virtual land. Like, why would I care about virtual land? Like, who cares? You could just make as much of it as possible. I think that's just a bit of a disconnect in terms of how people think about how they value things. Obviously, in the real world, if you own virtual land, you're going to want like a proper certification to say that you actually own that land and you can subscribe value to it. And I think more and more, once people realize that they're spending a lot of time in virtual worlds, they're going to want those same kind of claim to value in those new worlds. So it's just a new idea. And I honestly think if you go back to the start of this year, when we made the Play to Earn documentary, we made a real decision not to include the word NFT in it because no one knew what an NFT was. Fast forward to February and March, it was like the only word that people knew in their vocabulary. So if that's something to go by, I think that we are fast forwarding to this virtual future. And, it's not going to be long before people kind of realize that they actually have quite a lot of value to claim in virtual worlds.
All right. And Beryl, just off the back of that, I know you recently raised $4.6 million in a round led by A16Z, and the general partner there celebrated Yield Guild Games, saying that you're really working to shift the paradigm when it comes to gaming, essentially putting the power back into the hand. Well, not back, they never had it. Power into the hands of gamers. What's the future that you see for gaming and gaming in relation to crypto?
So the pandemic really accelerated, everything online, right? Like when we do meetings, recordings like these, right? Like everything is already done online. And I think more people would just enter the metaverse and games would evolve as well. So Axie Infinity is, the first game that has actually really proven the play to earn economics of like gaming, and that worked so well. And you'll see a number of games coming out as well. You have Zedrun, F1 Delta, Sandbox. So there will be various games for that would actually meet people's interests, right? And maybe there would be a time that education could be gamified as well, right? And working out could be gamified as well. Memberships to clubs could be, through NFTs, and you just enter the metaverse in the world, right? Purchasing, these merchandise as well could be in the form of NFTs. And if you can't really, convert it into the merchandise, then you end up using platforms like OpenSea to trade this NFTs, and the last person gets to exchange it for the merchant. There's so many things that will happen online, and physical activities would end up shifting online right now. Like you've seen Peloton, for example, and Zoom. So it's getting there. We just need platforms that could enable the 2.0 post-pandemic mindset as well.
Yeah, the world is definitely moving at a speed that I don't think we've experienced for a long time, and I think there's a very exciting future for us all where we experience some freedoms that we are not used to, but probably are going to benefit humankind. Thank you both for joining me, and I look forward to seeing what you both get up to next.
Pleasure. Yeah, glad to be here, Jen. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, great chat. Thanks, Jen.